From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made in the mid-1950s when a teenage boy named Paul spent a lot of time with a neighbor, an aging woman who lived alone. The boy got to know this woman, Eleanor, after he first met her during Baba Job Week. That was the annual event when scouts did chores for a little bit of money and learned about service. Some cleaned out sheds, some mowed lawns. Paul did the shopping for Eleanor and then would sit and chat with her. They would sit in her kitchen where she spent a lot of time listening to her radio. At this point, I should mention that the Paul in the story was a young Paul McCartney, who would go on to worldwide fame as a member of the Beatles, of course. And the Eleanor in the story was Eleanor Rigby, the name of one of the Beatles' most famous songs. Writing for The New Yorker in 2021, McCartney detailed his inspiration for the song, and he wrote the following, quote, "I still vividly remember the kitchen because she had a little crystal radio set. That's not a brand name. It actually had a crystal inside it. Crystal radios were quite popular in the 1920s and 30s, so I would visit, and just hearing her stories enriched my soul and influenced the songs I would later write," end quote. Paul McCartney says the song itself was consciously written to evoke the subject of loneliness, with the hope that they could get listeners to empathize. And an interesting thing has happened over the years. The impact of popular culture has caused many of us, probably myself included, to get the idea of loneliness a bit backward. Here's what I mean. Many people assume that the loneliest people in society are the oldest people, but that is not true. Data from various sources, including Ipsos, the Harvard Graduate School of Education, the BBC, the American Enterprise Institute, it all finds that adults over the age of 65 are the least lonely in our society. Adults under the age of 30 are the most lonely. But there is one undeniable fact. Older adults who are lonely, persistently lonely, live shorter lives than their peers by at least 3 years, and their final years are spent in worse health. That comes from research in Asia, where scientists say that older adults are at serious risk if they feel lonely or depressed. And they say that the pandemic did make all of it worse, but perhaps not exactly as we assumed. WXXI is focusing on aging this month. This particular discussion is part of a statewide, multi-platform public media initiative addressing social isolation among older adults. We'll also be reporting on and discussing other issues this month, and we'll spotlight the wisdom of older members of our community who have told us on occasion on Connections that sometimes they don't feel invited to talk about this anymore. But they are certainly on this program with WXXI and here today. Some are in our live audience for this program. We're broadcasting from St. John's Home in Rochester, and later this hour we'll take comments and questions from members of our live audience. I'd like to welcome our guests now. Part of the panel, Dr. Yates Conwell, a professor of psychiatry, a geriatric psychiatrist, and leader of the Vital Aging Initiative at the University of Rochester's Aging Institute. Dr. Conwell, thank you for being with us here.
Thank you for having me.
Also with us is Nate Sweeney, the Vice President of Skilled Services at St. John's. Nate, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us today.
And welcome to Mary Terry, a Rochester resident who's going to be sharing her story. Mary, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you so much.
And I will ask our live audience, welcome the panel now with a round of applause so the listeners know you're here too. We talk about loneliness, and I think certainly, Dr. Conwell, everyone feels lonely at different times or might feel lonely for different reasons. But in this context, can you talk a little bit about how you might define it as perhaps persistent or chronic versus momentary or daily?
Those are important distinctions to make because they have such profound implications for health and well-being. Loneliness is the subjective sense that one's interpersonal relationships aren't up to snuff. They don't satisfy what is really an inherent need that all people have to belong and to be connected with others. There are all sorts of things that can go wrong to challenge that state, and there's a great deal of variability in how much people need to have that feeling. Loneliness is not the same as social isolation. It's related. Loneliness varies across the lifespan in what its influences are and its outcomes might be. But loneliness is, I think we can all agree, by definition and in the personal experience, a very painful state.
And you mentioned isolation. There's psychological aging, there's physical aging, there's biological aging. They're not all the same thing, and they might not all progress the same way with all people. Would that contribute to possible loneliness?
There are, speaking specifically about the aging process and how it relates to that experience of loneliness, I did want to come back to just underscore the point that you made, that there are chronically lonely states, individuals, and there are transiently lonely individuals and states. And those are very important to distinguish. All of us feel lonely on occasion. It's when that loneliness persists for a long period of time that it can begin to take a very serious toll on somebody's psychological, physical, and social well-being. One of the really fascinating aspects of all this is that, by and large, older people tend to do better in their adaptation to the stressors of aging than one might expect. And if you look across the aging population of all ages, what you see is that while loneliness actually may be a little bit more common in younger and middle-aged people than older people, which is an interesting finding, you also find that older people, and this surprises a lot of folks, are in general, according to careful studies, more satisfied with their lives and generally have better well-being than younger and middle-aged people, despite all of the other challenges that come with aging in terms of the physical impacts that are normal in aging, the other illnesses related to aging that aren't normal but happen, in terms of the psychological stressors that we face with aging, loss of loved ones, changes in our social status and supports, and those kinds of things. So it's a real paradox. Why does that happen? There is also an observation that as people get older, and this relates specifically to the tendency to become isolated, while you may be more likely to experience sensory loss, hearing problems, vision problems, have physical illnesses that might prevent you from mixing it up socially, keeping in close contact with friends and such, older people tend to, we call it, prune their social networks as part of normal aging anyway, independent of those other things. Older people are more likely to value close personal relationships than younger people who tend to value more, even if they're less close relationships. So older people will prune their relationships to come up with a smaller, more closer, more fulfilling at that point in the age
Deeper
course.
friendships, perhaps?
Deeper friendships is an excellent way to put it. They also feel, in combination with that, more confidence in the ability to manage their emotions in the turmoil of interpersonal relationships, and structure their lives in a way that really enables the older person to actually do better with fewer contacts and social supports than a younger or middle-aged person. So there's some real strengths of older people in managing the issues related to loneliness and isolation.
And we'll talk a little bit more about resilience as we go throughout this hour. I want to ask Nate Sweeney, Vice President of Skilled Services here at St. John's. First of all, roughly 300 residents here, yes?
Yes, about 300 residents at the home.
And how do you do the work of making sure that anyone who is here, part of your community, not only feels engaged but has opportunities to either connect with others or maybe connect with passions that they have that they'd like to ignite here?
Absolutely. So that's a large question. There's the process of welcoming people into a new environment, and the transition when folks arrive at a nursing home, either through a rehab stay and needing to stay for long-term care or a planned move into a long-term care facility. There's major life transitions. There is the setting aside of habits, of patterns, of things that they might be comfortable with in moving to a new environment. And so really trying to connect with people as they're coming into this environment where everyone else has already been living there is a great social transition for people to have to navigate. What you what we try to do is to get to know the person, get to know what is meaningful to them as swiftly as we can. We have a lot of skilled social workers. We have a lot of skilled folks in therapeutic recreation who try to find out, how does someone want to navigate this space? Are they more introverted? Are they more extroverted? Those immediately come into play for the types of activities that we put on, as well as the type of engagement that someone might most benefit from.
And how vocal are your residents about what they need and what they are looking for?
I would say that there is a huge spread. We absolutely have folks from a generation who do not want to cause any stir or make any waves and don't necessarily express what they're looking for. And we have folks that come in ablazing saying, I want this, where is this, how can we make this happen?
Yeah, I asked that question, Nate, because Nate and I were talking before the program, and I think of people in my own family, and there's such a range among my parents, extended family, some who are getting older who've become very isolated and might play bridge, might play with online with friends, but basically do not do anything to self-start, and will engage if you pull them in, but will not tell you anything about what they're looking for, and have become increasingly isolated, whereas others who are aging, the moment something is amiss, will tell you and will want to correct it. And I guess, this is a big family here, but for all of us who have families, that's not easy to navigate, figuring out how best to communicate and find someone's needs.
It's very often, families come in with advice about their loved one, or they come in with a perception of how mom has been doing in her home without knowing really some of the pieces of where she is right now. I think to Dr. Codwell's point, really the piece around pruning can also be applied to the types of things you want to be doing. We have people that will say, you know what, I'm thrilled to try a new craft that I have not done before. And there are people who say, I'm not doing that for 1 minute. Do not invite me to that event. That's going to be a complete waste of my time and make me angry as I'm trying to navigate glue. So I think
you're describing my father.
There's the deeper sense of knowing and self-knowledge. A lot of what you were describing to me sounds like wisdom in managing relationships for what someone is looking for themselves.
Well, Mary Terry is here, a Rochester resident who, in my conversations with Mary over the last couple days, I know there's a lot of wisdom in there. And I want to start just by asking, how are you doing these days, Mary?
I'm doing good. I mean, I get up every morning.
You feel fulfilled?
I do. And the reason I say I feel fulfilled is because I get up every morning at 5. I go to bed at 10. And I have my kids. I'm at the age now, and I don't mind. I'm 67. And I know that I'm creeping into that age. I ain't gonna say I'm running into that age, but I'm creeping into that age. And I already done told my children, I say, this is where I'm gonna be at until the Lord take me home. I wanna stay in my own surroundings and in my own house. And so my kids said, we already know, Ma, so you don't have to tell us. So, I mean, I have a lot. My main thing, and my kids would tell you if they was here, the main thing that satisfied me the most is my kitchen and my bedroom. I love to cook. And I have a bed, queen-size bed with like 15 pillows on it. And that's
what are all those pillows for, Mary?
Decoration. But don't mess with my pillows. I'm okay as long as you don't mess with my pillows. Every night I get my pillows and I stack them right up in the chair, and then I put them in, then I get in my bed, because I have pillows that I sleep on and pillows that I just look at. And so my son said, Mom, that's ridiculous. And if I wake up and saw on some pillow, you're in trouble. But other than that, I'm good. I don't do a lot because I can't do a lot. because I have illnesses too. So therefore, I have to take it one day at a time. When my body say it's ready to go, then I'm ready to go. If my body say sit down, I have to sit down. So I kind of feel the people when they do it, because when I was taking you way back yonder, when I was a little kid, I met this man. He was blind. I was in my living room looking out the window, and he would make that walk every morning. But this morning, he didn't make the turn, and he was headed for the street. I ran out the house and I got him. And we bonded. He was really old. I think he had to be close to 70. But he was out there walking every morning. He was old compared to what I was. And so I would walk him all the way around. We live right next to we always called it the old folks' home. And they would have picnics and everything out there. And I did this every day with him. Every morning I would do that with him. So one day,
How old were you, Mary?
I think I had to be about 7 or 8.
See, when you're 7 or 8, 70 seems really old.
Yeah.
You get older and you think, that does not seem that old.
My mom kept saying, he not that old. But I felt in my heart that I had to do something for him. And so I did that every day. And then one day, I sat in my window and I waited. And I waited. And I waited. And he never came. If you've ever been devastated, it's when you go run into that building to find him and they tell you he's not there anymore. The Lord took him home. So my thing is, I think as I grew older, I became involved in the elderly people. Because I was a home health aide for 10 years. I took care of the elderly. I had a lot of cancer patients. A lot of them left me. A lot of them, I left them. And I had one lady, she said, oh, Mary, go home, go home. Your time is up. So I went home. The aide that was there when I left, she said, you know, she waiting on you to come back. And then she said, that's when she gonna go home. And I said, don't say that. And sure enough, that Monday when I came back, she did. She left and went home. I held her hand through the whole thing, and it was like a cold chill went through me. And she would talk about her husband, and I enjoyed it. I sat right there and I listened to her. And you know, I always said, well, one day I'm gonna be there. And I hope and pray someone takes the time to listen to me. Because you know, that's all they have left is those memories. If they can keep those memories going, they will, until the Lord say, that's it.
And Mary, you've got experience with that. I wanted to ask you about the fact that you've lost your husband.
I did.
And you met your husband when you were both how old?
5
She's
years
holding up
old.
5 fingers.
We was in kindergarten. And I'll tell you, like I told them, I'm just a country city girl. I was born in Monroe, Louisiana, and I moved to Chicago when I was 3. And I'm just mixed up there right there. So I'm all mixed up there. But anyway, we was in kindergarten, and we didn't like each other, you know. It was just one of them things that we was just kids in kindergarten. And so then we went on into elementary, got on up there in the 8th grade, we graduated. And then we went into high school. I went to biology class one day, and I look up, and who in my biology class? He is, sitting right behind me. So finally, he was a butcher at a store, and he asked me for my 7 digits. I didn't know what that was. We weren't allowed to date.
Mary, kids today wouldn't really know either. That.
I don't know. Give me your 7 digits. So I said, I don't know what that is. So anyway, I did. And I got married when I was 18. He was 19. And we bore 3 kids. And my husband got sick. Come to find out his older age, he only had 1 kidney. He was born with 1 kidney. His mom said she didn't know. And he had diabetes, and I was working at the Rochester City School District, and I took care of my husband every morning before I went to work, and I did all the things that you could do in a nursing home for him. And so my husband died the day before our 25th anniversary. He had bought all my stuff for my anniversary, and he gave it to my daughter and told her to give it to me. So he knew he wasn't going to be there. And I woke up that morning, and I said, oh, let me go. I'm going to the bathroom and everything. And I peeked in the room, and he was like, you know how you be trying to get up to sit up in the bed? So I said, oh, T, I said, I'll be right back. I said, you must be feeling much better today. And no answer. So I backed up and went back in there, and I started from the feet up. Feet was cold, legs were cold, all up here was all warm. And I asked him, how could he do that to me? So, I mean, I get emotional about it, but it was a thing that the Lord decided to do, and it was nothing I could do about that. But I miss him every day, and there's times that I can talk about it, times I can't.
Well, you said before the program, I think something really interesting about grief. You've said that for years, sometimes it hits you when you're not expecting it.
It does.
And you think about how to deal with it. And you also had a moment where, for a long time, you'd keep your husband's suits, and then made some changes there. So
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, one day I came home from work, and I was feeling really good. And so I said, well, I'm going to go in and I'm going to finish cleaning up. And so, and I have to let you know, I'm not the cleaner. My sister is the cleaner. I'm the cook. So she likes to clean, I likes to cook. So I said, well, I'm going to go in and finish doing what I have to do. And so I started looking through the closet, but everything looked like it went black, just black. And I couldn't see anything really good. So I'm just ripping stuff down at the closet, and I called my son, and I said, Drake, get up here, hurry up. Somebody broke in the house, and then he runs up there, and he said, Mom, what you mean somebody broke in the house? He said, I just came from up here, and wasn't nothing moved. I said, they took your daddy's suits. All your father's suits are gone. He said, Mom, look at me. Why would someone break in this house just to take some suits? I said, I don't know, but you better find them. We need to find them. And so we kept on, and my son went through the closet, and he said, Mom, come here. The suits was there, but I went black. I lost it where I couldn't see. So then I realized it was time for me to remove his stuff, because I couldn't rest. I had to take care of him. I had to protect those things. And so I took them to the church, because we give clothes out to the people. And so I started feeling better, but we had this thing at work where we all sit down on lunch and talk. So the art teacher told me, she said, Mary, she said, you know what it is? She said, you can't look in your back seat because you're scared you're going to see Jesus back there. And she said, that's who you need to talk to. Because it's nothing we can do, nothing you can do. It's just a thing. Grieving is you never know when you're going to stop. And that is the truth. You never know when it's going to come to an end. Grieving is a thing that it takes its time. It carries you through some stuff. You go through some stuff. And you have to be able to acknowledge that and everything. And I have to talk to my father every day in order to do this. I'm talking about my father above. My dad is dead. So I have to do that every morning. And you know, when you little, your parents tell you some things and you say, I don't know what that means. My mother them used to say, you pray without ceasing. I never knew what that meant till I had children. When you have children, children will make you do some things you have never done. I've never had issues with my kids. Honest, I have to give that to God. I've never. But I pray for them every day. Pray for them every night. And you know what my mom used to say? I put some prayers for y'all up on the mantle. I keep prayers everywhere. I can wake up in the middle of the night pray. I said, you know what? I said, God is tired of hearing my mouth. Because I worry him so much. I do. If I don't know nobody else, I know how to call on him. And I said, Lord, I know you said when I ain't talking to you, I know you getting some rest. Because that's what I do. I do that.
Mary, I deeply appreciate you sharing how you've worked through some of your grief and how you continue to do that. And Dr. Conwell, part of what she's describing is her own way of coping. Prayer, finding Jesus in the back seat, and your family. You're still you're obviously very close to your family, but you also have your son's nearby, living real close. In the same house?
3 kids. All 3 of them was living with me until my daughter got married last April. I got 2 sons and a granddaughter living with me. And my kids know that they can stay with me as long as they know and live, as long as they respect my house.
Not touch the pillows on the bed?
Don't touch them. And don't mess with my pots and pans.
Dr. Conwell, I mean, so she has gone through something that obviously many, many people have and will, which is the loss of a partner or a spouse. Mary's talking about her coping. Also acknowledging, though, that it doesn't permanently end grief or knock grief out. Grief can come back here. What do you make of some of her coping strategies, and what do you think we should understand about how we build that resilience?
Thank you for your story, Mary. It's wonderful. It's beautiful to hear.
Thank
And it's a model for us all to appreciate the importance of finding that well of strength wherever we can. And the great majority of people can work through that. Unfortunately, some have a lot more trouble with it. I think, as Nate was saying earlier, a lot of it is about actually tailoring the response, the environment to meet somebody's individual preferences and needs, just as happens here. Having family, of course, is very important, and one of the things that we know from our work with older adults for whom this transition has not gone well and who've become demoralized, depressed, even suicidal under certain really drastic circumstances, is that social connections are a really important buffer for that. So looking back, you've been through a lot over time, and you've learned a lot clearly about how to build and maintain those important relationships, be they with family or with friends or through your church. And there are a lot of different ways that people can accomplish that. But social connectedness is a very important protective factor against the much more difficult outcomes that some people can experience in those circumstances.
And Doctor, the last thing I want anyone listening to this program today to assume is that as we age, we all become more lonely or more depressed or even have suicidal ideation. Again, I'll say again, the research indicates, and Dr. Conwell knows this as well as anybody, that loneliness is a real concern or a threat to people who are aging, but 65 and older is the least lonely population for all the reasons that our guests have been talking about, the resiliency, their experience. When it does happen, though, what do you want listeners today, this audience and listeners on this program, to understand about the threat when it sort of goes over that tipping point, how to recognize and what we ought to be doing about that?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of it is prevention. The awareness that loneliness is bad for you is really important to understand and to have. And it is. The loneliness, the prevalence rates of loneliness in the studies are really very broad, so it's hard to pin down exactly on a population basis how common it is in older people. It's something like from 11% to 43% in different studies. It's significant wherever it happens in a person because it's associated with a bunch of physical illnesses like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, cerebrovascular disease, dementia, mental disorders, depression. It's a risk factor for suicide at any point in the life course in older people too. And actually early mortality from any cause, so that there are interesting studies which show that the risk for mortality if you are lonely, if you have a weak social support network, are comparable to things we understand fully from a public health perspective, things like smoking. Or if you have heart disease, not taking your medications or not following your diet. So it's a big deal. That said, when circumstances change around one that might increase the risk for loneliness, and we've talked about that, the physical problems, the losses, bereavement, for example, there are ways to address that. They tend to fall, there are a lot of different ways, and that's why it's so important for that approach to be one that the individual is comfortable with, because not everybody is going to want to, if they've not been a member of a faith community, pick up and make that happen all of a sudden, or begin participating in congregate activities. But some will. Others, absent that, might be able to respond to other changes in their environment so that they naturally interact with other people more often, or perhaps can take advantage of technology. We think that technology might have its real drawbacks with regard to our ability to learn to be there, present, and relate to other people in real time. It's a concern, I think, personally, more for younger and middle-aged folks than for older folks. And not just because technology use doesn't come as easily to older people anyway. I think it will and does increasingly. But that, because of what we were talking about before, older people can use technology in selective ways that meets their needs. Pets, real live dogs and cats can be a source of that, meeting that emotional need for older people. Robotic pets. Now there's an interesting topic coming to bear. Participation in, even there are kinds of talk therapies that can address somebody's loneliness by understanding how to give them a better perspective on and skills in seeking out the opportunities to engage with others that they in particular are comfortable with. And there's a whole range of approaches to that.
And Nate, I want to read a little bit of something that surprised me, but I think it will tell us a little bit about the importance of really getting to know and staying in touch with, in close contact with, family members or your residents perhaps here at St. John's. This is according to a study published in 2021 in the Journal of American Geriatric Society. Loneliness does not necessarily come from isolation. It is connected, but it is not a perfect circle. They write that it turns out that there is not always a relationship between being socially isolated and feeling lonely. The authors write, quote, 72% of people who reported being lonely were objectively not socially isolated. They might go to church or be part of a community or talk to their kids occasionally, but they felt lonely anyway. 74% of those who met the criteria to be labeled socially isolated did not feel lonely as a result. The authors go on to talk about what feels like superficial connection versus fulfilling connection. So if you're part of a community and, well, there's a euchre game or there's a bridge game, you know, you could play in it or you can get an offer to play in it. Or there might be a sock hop. Do we still do sock hops? None of our under 40 audience knows what that is. The offers are there, but is it meaningful connection? So it seems incumbent on me that whether it's your role here at St. John's or us and our families, we have to really understand, not just say, well, you know, they've got options, they have a social calendar. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. I think what you're talking about, as I'm hearing it, is meaningful connection. Yeah. And I think one of the things that can't be glossed over is how much ageism and ableism can absolutely work as a force against those meaningful connections. Because if you're craving that time or that that connection with someone who may have cut you out, circles of friends who don't want to face a reality of a health crisis in a loved one, distancing themselves from that friendship. Those losses that people grieve, I absolutely could see as a contributor towards loneliness. I think there is a constant stream of ageism in our country and in our culture. Even Dove soap, which is the body acceptance, body positivity brand, has anti-wrinkle cream, anti-aging cream. There's not that acceptance there that you see with other pieces, and unfortunately, that can happen in meaningful circles as well as people succumb to a isolation from people who may have aged faster physically, may have a disability that makes it harder to go to lunch together, and just not knowing how to navigate the resources to continue to see each other or to see each other in the way that was meaningful and was the tradition that you guys held together.
We can't all be Paul Rudd, 54 years old and looking amazing. I understand that, but I also understand when you're talking about this desire to make sure that there is meaningful connection. So if you have new residents here, or if we in our family, perhaps, if a parent loses a parent, if we lose one of our parents and one of our parents is now without a partner, how do you check in meaningfully to really know if someone feels fulfilled or has the connection that is meaningful to them as opposed to just an invitation or an opportunity?
It's a great question and a hard question. I think it can be a long time to build that trust before that type of vulnerable conversation can take place. Because to say, I'm hurting, I'm lonely, is a big social risk, unfortunately, I think, in our society. And those times when people are able to express that, really just meeting with them in the moment where they are and find out what do you think you need? How do you think I can help you with that is so important. That is a wonderful place where volunteers in our senior communities and in our healthcare facilities can really make a difference with the folks who really need that one-on-one connection in order to build a relationship, to spend time getting to know someone with those trust-building times before the real meaning can start to be built.
And looking at this by gender, Dr. Conwell, we know that people of all backgrounds, men, women, can experience loneliness, isolation, depression, suicidal ideation. But in general, for the reasons that Nate is talking about, social stigma, expectations, do men handle this worse than women?
In general, yes. I'm afraid that's the case. That may be changing as different age cohorts move through life, but your dad, my dad, me as an emerging older person, we have traditionally derived so much meaning in life from our professional activity, from our jobs, from the relationships that were built around that. And our society largely determines that we should leave that behind at age 65 or 62 or 70. And it's very hard to replace that for men. Now, obviously, there are a lot of rapid changes in our society wherein women constitute a larger proportion of the workforce. This is going to be more of an issue for women as time goes by. But overall, women are better at establishing those kinds of meaningful relationships and confidential relationships than are men, and maintaining them over time.
Mary, what fills up your cup now if you're having a day where you need some kind of connection? What's the plan for you?
I never really thought about it. I more or less when I'm home, I'm looking at westerns. I like westerns, and I like all of Steven Seagal movies.
Steven Seagal.
My kids.
That's a little violent.
My kids say that we'll look at anything but to put no Steven Seagal on that TV. And my daughter, she often say, Mom, she say, you look at Matt Dillon all the time. She say, them people don't even exist no more. She say, look at something that's alive. But I think I have to do what enjoyment I have. I don't go out. I never drank. I don't smoke. I have a boring life. I worked at the Rochester City School District for 30 years. The kids there kept my energy drive going because you know how they is sometimes. You really have to. And I felt so connected to them. I had like 600 kids in one building that now today those same kids can come up and say, I can't go anywhere. Hi, Miss Terry. Who you? I don't remember them because I've aged.
Well, they've aged.
And and they got older.
Yeah.
But I was more or less a parent that gave the teacher their breaks, and I did detention. And I always tell the kids when they come into the detention room, drop it at the door. It's only one boss in here, and that's me. So therefore, you know, and I guess I'm just like that. Some of the kids say, Miss Terry, you so mean. I said, I know, baby. That's okay. But I say, that's okay. So then they say, well, you yell at us sometimes. Do you yell at your children like that? I said, all the time. And so they ask my children that, and my daughter say, yeah, but you know what? She's sweet. She it's just her. My mother's loud. She's from the country. She's from down there in the woods. But
Those kids know you loved them, though, didn't they?
yeah, they did. Because you know what? Like I said, I could be at Wegmans, I could be anywhere. Kids would walk up and hug me, and when they dispersed number 6 school, the parents always holler, well, Miss Terry, where you going? I'm going to another building. But you gonna take our kids? No. Well, you got to raise our children like you did us. No, those days are dead and gone. I can't do it anymore. But I love children. And and like I say, my satisfaction comes from when I go in the kitchen and start cooking. Because, see, my kids fuss at me all the time. They say, Mom, why are you cooking all this food? Eat. And my one gift to society would have been, if I was able to, would have had a way I could feed the homeless. I always wanted to do that. And I tell my kids, if I could only do that, we might can make a difference. Because I just cannot accept the fact that so many people are living on the street and not being able to be taken care of. My son, my middle son, he says, him and his teacher went to feed the homeless downtown in the garage down there where they was living. And I cooked this big pot of goulash. So the man found my son, and he said, who made the goulash? He said, my mom. He said, well, where's Mama? He said, she in the house in the bed. She ain't here. So my thing is, I like to cook. I like to help people. I like to talk to people. If I can talk to you and help you in some way, I think I like to do that. I can, like I told, I can pick a conversation with y'all and one-on-one. We could talk all day long because I just got so much I could talk about. But when I got a big old crowd like this, I just can't.
Yeah, she said she was going to clam up. She warned me.
See, y'all got me stirred now. So you know, my kids will tell me all the time, Mama, don't talk so much. Just ease it in.
No,
ease
Mary,
it out.
we are glad you're talking.
But back to what
Dr. Kamala, yeah.
Doctor was saying. Men, I think what happens with men when they get older and they get that loneliness in with them, I think it's because they know that they're the head of the house. And they've been that way and they had that strength. And they was able to take care of their wife and their children. And then they find themselves where they can't do it anymore. They clam up. But all of us is going to clam up one day. We all are going to know that we can't do it. I'm 67 years old. I could be in that kitchen, and I could say, dang, I got to go get it. I could walk from my kitchen to my living room and don't know what I went there for. You know what I had to do? I had to turn around, go all the way back to the kitchen, and that's, oh, yeah, that's what I went there to get. But it's okay. It's okay because you know what? You're going to have fun with it. Like I said, I don't party, I don't drink, I don't do that, but I love to dance. That's my kick, is dancing. Now, my kids, when they was going to elementary school, they couldn't leave and go to school till they danced with their mama every morning. Every morning I make them get up, y'all get your breakfast on, get it all in. We get that, I cook breakfast every morning, but we gonna get some music going on up in here and we gonna dance. And I still do that. I dance with my kids as much as I possibly
That's
can.
beautiful.
My middle son, he at night, when we get ready to go to bed, I said, put that music on. He turned, I said, turn it up. Ain't nobody living upstairs, don't nobody live downstairs. This is all us. Blast it. And we have fun. And I think the more you can move and do what you do, all y'all women like to dance. Yes, no? Yeah. All y'all men like to dance. Yes, no? There you go. Get it. Get them legs to moving. Do what you do best. Enjoy life. Because you know what? One day you is going to have to sit. And you're going to have to think. My mom is 84 years old. And we're going down there this August to see her. She got 10 kids. And God has not let that chain been broken yet. None of her kids has passed away. My sister will be 70 years old next year. And you know what? I enjoy it. She has a little bit of Alzheimer's, but she lives by herself. She cooks. She takes care of herself. And I am so grateful for that. And I just hope and pray that when that time comes, I can do the same thing. And I'm going to tell y'all one more time, what y'all got to do?
Dance.
Dance.
All right.
Turn your radio on, honey, as loud as you can, and dance. I don't care if you don't do nothing, just this. Move your body. And thank God for every ache and pain you may have. Because I do. I hurt every day, all day. But I enjoy life. And I wished I could have lived it out with my husband. But God seen better things. I never got married again. But I do have a special friend. But other than that, it's just me and my children.
Well,
And my kitchen and my bedroom.
I see some hands up here.
Yes, he will dance. He's not as outgoing dancing as I am, but he will. And he likes to tell me, well, I'm finna end this conversation because you talking too much, so I'm finna end this conversation.
No. Mary, that's why we all came here today. We're going to turn to the audience now for questions, comments. We are broadcasting with a live audience today at the St. John's home in Rochester, and you're hearing from Mary Terry, a Rochester resident. Nate Sweeney is here, Vice President of Skilled Services at St. John's, and Dr. Yates Conwell, Professor of Psychiatry, Geriatric Psychiatrist, and leader of the Vital Aging Initiative at the University of Rochester's Aging Institute. Any hands? Right? Multiple hands. David's got the microphone. So again, this is a live audience. We'll start here. Just say your name if you could, and go ahead.
My name is Liz. I live in the St. John's Brookstone Apartments. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the idea of loneliness that apparently occurs, not necessarily because you're isolated, that kind of thing. And to what Nate said about people need to be met where they are, and that's especially important if you have a loved one who has dementia, because where they are can be really any place, and it's very important to be able to come to them where they are, not where you would like them to be or where you think they should be, but actually wherever they are. But I think that loneliness, because it can occur at all these different ages and in all these different social settings, I think it has something to do with people not feeling like they are not heard. So I think active listening is something that would, if more people could do it with each other, would help. So to be able to do active listening, where you really let the person, give them time and space to say things, and then meet them where that is, and then they feel really heard and really known. And I think maybe that is partially why loneliness is occurring across the different age groups, that especially for young people, maybe they aren't really doing that active listening with each other.
That is such interesting insight. I'll start with Dr. Conwell. What do you think?
Absolutely. And it's hard to do, right, active listening, because people oftentimes don't. Yeah, and nor do they have the practice or necessarily the time or the opportunity or the privacy or whatever that takes. So it's got to be intentional to make that happen. I think we have an obligation, all of us, to create the environments and value that skill set, and to teach people how to do it. Just to acknowledge that your reference to the special circumstances, in a way, of caregivers who are dedicating so much of their time and lives and energy to the care of another person and become isolated so easily in that role is a real important one and a challenge. We have something at the university called the Rochester Center for the Social Ties and Aging, which focuses on dementia caregiver and social engagement. I mention it because I love the acronym so much. Rockstar Center, Center for Social Ties and Aging, and to acknowledge in that the extraordinary selflessness and contribution that it takes to be a caregiver for somebody else, but that with that comes a real vulnerability, I think, to becoming socially isolated. We need to work with that.
Nate?
Absolutely echoing that. I think for caregivers in the community, that aspect of giving and giving and giving of oneself to a loved one often comes at the expense of personal pursuits, personal networks of connection, and without good respite opportunities from that caregiving to recharge yourself, that it I think can be very isolating and can create a lot of loneliness. There are a number of professional caregivers here at the home who, and I've seen this throughout my career in nursing homes, folks who really just give and give of themselves to the residents that they take care of, and that incredibly tight connection that they find. And sometimes that is twice as meaningful to the caregiver as it is to the care recipient. And those relationships are so real and really need to be honored, nurtured, and so much of medical care gets in the way of that real nursing connection.
I don't want to go outside my expertise, but it's so interesting that you point out how valuable active listening is to you. And when I think about the loneliness data that shows under the age of 30, adults under the age of 30, the loneliest group, they're supposed to be the most connected. They've got opportunities to connect everywhere. They have all these platforms. But if all they are doing is sort of shouting at each other and dunking on each other on social media, that's not active listening, and that's not feeling actually heard. So not to go outside my expertise, but I really appreciate that insight. That is really powerful. Next, we'll bring the microphone down here.
Dan Lyon at Lifespan. To drive the point home about isolation and loneliness as a driving force in the lack of connections for the men and women I deal with in a 12-county region that unfortunately have been scammed out of money. And all of my clients that I'm currently dealing with have the lack of connections and are isolated and or lonely, and they're using technology, which maybe some are thinking they're socially and adapted to do, but unfortunately are being taken advantage of on these platforms, whether it be social media, whether it be a text message and or phone calls, and next thing we know, we're losing $100,000 in a wire transfer or gift card purchases. So being connected and the lack of isolation and loneliness is extremely important. My 100-year-old grandmother, who still lives in Canandaigua at 101 nearly, I asked her over and over, I go, Graham, what's the secret to life? Because obviously you got it. As my grandfather died in 1982, she's been widowed ever since. She said, keep moving, keep active.
Keep dancing, Mary.
Mary, keep moving. Stay involved. and stay connected. I think that's extremely important.
Yeah, thanks. Mary, another endorsement for Mary's life philosophy. No, it really is beautiful, Mary. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And Nate, can you just talk a little bit about making sure as we age that, I mean, there's always going to be new technology. It's hard to keep up, but with new technology is more vulnerability.
Absolutely. So I think, so many scams, and speaking outside my area of expertise, but they're built on false relationships. And so when you use technology that feels like you're connecting with someone, which was designed to make you feel connected, that just becomes another pathway for someone to take advantage. Certainly there are fantastic uses of technology. When I think about the great schism that nursing homes had at the start of COVID, when we had to shut out every loved one, small child, younger volunteers, and technology became the only way to connect people to the folks who were most meaningful to them. There's great pieces of it, but yeah, I think the more people are aware of how these tools can be misused, the better off we can all be.
I think we've got time for at least one more. Go ahead.
Jennifer, at Senior Life Advocates and Consultants, there's so much that can be said. There's so many aspects to all of this. One of my pushes is identity and purpose. And when you ask a 40-year-old at a party, tell me about yourself, they often lead with occupation. That's what our country seems to do. And then the person is 65-ish, and they say, well, I'm a retired teacher now. And then they're 80. What do they say? So there's this whole piece about how are we living our day. Mary's a great example of, I think, how to do it right, girl. Okay? That's what I'm thinking.
You got a couple more years in there.
But then in addition, I think that there's another big gateway, and that is around the issue of driving. I have so many families come to see me, and they say, Mom or Dad shouldn't be driving anymore. And my strong view on this is driving is a matter of capability. It has nothing to do with age. If you're capable enough at any age, you should drive. Some people are young and they're not quite capable, but they're out there driving. So that's how I feel about that. But when I have the kids in front of me, I say, well, so, what are they doing wrong with their driving? And let's talk about that whole big picture and maybe rehabbing their driving. But I want to point out to you that when they stop driving, their world has shrunk to their front yard and their backyard and their house until you come or someone comes into that world with them. So you need to have a calendar, and if you're going to bring this up to Mom or Dad, you need to already have that calendar filled in of how you're going to come back and forth, who's going to take them to the doctor, who's going to do all these things, and they start all of a sudden thinking, uh-oh, this might not be as easy as just take away the license. But that can be a big piece to, isolation, and it's hard.
Well, I'm going to just briefly say that I hear a lot of ageism in politics, and I think your point about competence in driving, competence in leadership, what I don't like hearing is, well, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, well, they're 80. Well, so what that they're 80? I know 80-year-olds who could run any company in the world, and I know people who are, 60 who probably shouldn't. And it's a matter of competence and acuity. So for driving, for leadership, for involvement, I agree with that. I think that's really important. I know the conversations can be very difficult to have. On the subject of identity, Mary, we have an audience member saying, I'm a teacher, now I'm a retired teacher, now I'm what? So you are, how do you introduce yourself? You are what?
Mary Terry.
Mary Terry.
Okay, went back to the teaching. You're going to always be a teacher. Regardless to whether you're retired and you're getting paid for it, you're going to always be a teacher. Because you're going to teach somebody something. And that is what you do. I do it all the time. Driving, I didn't learn to drive until I was 43 years old. Because I had this dream in my head that my husband was going to always be there to take me wherever I wanted to go. No one had to do anything for me but Raymond Terry Sr., okay? He bought him a 1998 Dodge Durango when they first came out. He lived till that next year. So I got this big old monster of a truck out there, but I don't know how to drive. So my son, the oldest one, he did all the driving, like going to the grocery store and stuff like that when his father was sick and everything. So my husband told me this. He said, let me tell you something. You got a truck. He said, I know I'm to blame too, because you had to go to dialysis and stuff with me. But I'm going to tell you now, if you ask people to do stuff for you, they're going to want to drive your truck. So now you got to make up your mind what you're going to do. So that Sunday after everything was over with and everything, I asked my son, I said, come on and take your mama to church. Church is right around the corner. I could have ran around the corner, but I just want to ride. So anyway, he said, Mama, if you want to go, drive. He said, you've been taking up lessons. You got to know how to do this. You know what to brake. You know what the gas pedal. He said, you know how to do this. I got up in that truck. I backed up in that backyard. I turned that truck around maybe about 3 or 4 times trying to get it that way. And I drove. I drove to church. I was so happy because it was something I did. And so I've been driving ever since. Now that I got a little sicker, my kids really don't want me to drive. But I got a Rogue. I'm going to drive. And I told I'm going to drive. I can use both hands if I have to, but I got to keep moving. The minute you stop moving, it's going to hit you. You can't let nothing sit up under your feet and don't move, sisters. I'm telling you, you better do what I'm telling you. You better get up there and move. My daughter just said, Mom, don't take no garbage out. I'll ease that garbage out that door sometime. But you have to be careful. And yes, you will always be a teacher. And you can sit down at some of these elderly people's feet, and you can learn some stuff you ain't never heard of in your whole entire life. I did it with my husband's grandmother. She taught me some stuff and said some stuff that I always will remember. And I love her for that. I tell everybody I had 3 mamas. I have my birth mother, I had my other mama, and I had my husband's mama. And I had 1 grandmother. And all of them is gone except for my birth mother. And I'm worried about her. But you got to talk to your father and tell him what you want. And believe you me, he will give it to you. He will give it to you. Now, if you think I'm playing, just ask him and see, don't you get it?
Well, we are reaching the end of our time, and I am grateful for this conversation and to St. John's Home for hosting this conversation with a live Connections audience. I'm going to ask all 3 of our guests, if they can, to try to package some final thoughts they'd like to leave with our audience of about 30 seconds apiece. It's tight. Mary just looked at me like no one's ever told me 30 seconds. I'll start with you, Mary.
Oh, I just packaged it. Ladies, do what you like to do. Enjoy, go get your hair done. Just pamper yourselves. Just do it. My daughter, she walked in the door the other day, ball on one side, hair on the other side. I'm like, girl, what you done did? She said, I said, I might want to do that. She looked at me, no, you don't. And so, but I'm just saying, enjoy life for what it is. Because he ain't going to give you no more you can bear. Believe you me that. Because what I went through, he ain't give me no more than I could bear. Because I handled it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Nate Sweeney.
I think as we're all kind of emerging from a very insane time in U.S. history, world history, this is a time to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to make new connections, try new things by taking a dancing lesson or going to something new, to push yourself if you can in order to strengthen those networks now, and reach out and find folks who need a connection and connect with them.
Dr. Yates Conwell.
I love that idea that once a teacher, always a teacher. So thank you for that. It's so true and so important when we look at ageism in our society and ableism. And the impacts of social isolation and loneliness, to recognize that we all socially have an obligation to give older people the opportunities that we need to continue to exercise the skills, experiences that we have gained over the time. It's not just that you are the same teacher now that you were, you're a little different, but it's also enriched by the life of experience that you've got. There's a construct in the academic world of epidemiology called years of preventive life lost, right? They talk about, if you die at a younger age, then the loss of your potential is great. Absolutely true. What you don't hear about and tends to get discounted is what I call years of experience in life lost. When we lose an older person who's not been able to share their experience, the richness that they bring to our cultural fabric, then we all have lost on that. So yes, we have a lot of work to do to overcome the ageism in our society, both at the larger social level as well as the individual level, and really take advantage of the wisdom and the wonderful approach to life that we've seen here today, and Mary has helped us understand so well.
Thank you to a wonderful panel today. And thank you to St. John's for hosting us. We greatly appreciate the hospitality. Thanks to the live audience for being here. I cannot possibly mention every person on WXXI's team that is part of this broadcast. They're doing such outstanding work. Thank you to them. And from all of us at Connections and WXXI, we'll talk to you again. Thank you very much.